Rain spattered against the bookstore's awning, small rivers tracing down the glass as I shook off my umbrella. My coat was already damp, sleeves plastered to my arms, but the promise of dry shelter had lured me inside. I patted my pockets for my phone, no messages, and let the warmth of paper and ink envelop me. Fiction, biographies, travel guides, the familiar shelves stood sentinel against the storm. Life at 38 wasn't exactly riveting. Married 10 years, 2 kids, a steady software engineering job that paid the bills and rarely set my pulse racing. Stability was comforting, but tonight I craved something different, a momentary escape from routines, from calendar notifications pinging me about meetings and soccer practice. I wandered through aisles until the hum of fluorescent lights and the scent of fresh coffee tumbled into my senses. A small cafe sat tucked in the corner, and beyond it, a display of new releases caught my eye. I stepped closer, scanning the titles, when a soft, disbelieving voice drifted through the quiet. "Griffin?" Griffin Rhodes. My heart thudded in surprise. I turned, and there she stood, Talia Monroe, like a sunbeam breaking through clouds. Memories flooded back. Dorm room debates, late-night coding sessions, shared laughter over cold pizza and cheaper beer. But that had been 12 years ago. Since then, life had carried us down separate paths. She looked different. Radiant, eyes bright, an energy that seemed to hum just under her skin. Her hair was longer than I remembered, cascading past her shoulders in gentle waves, and she wore a yellow raincoat that glowed amid the bookstore's dim lighting. "Talia," I managed, voice cracking between astonishment and delight. My lips split into a grin I hadn't worn in weeks. "Is it really you?" She closed the distance in 2 quick strides and threw her arms around me. Her hug was warm, firm, exactly as I'd pictured it in 1,000 daydreams back in college when late nights dissolved into early mornings and friendship felt like the greatest adventure. I chuckled as I returned the embrace. "I can't believe this. What are the odds of all the bookstores in all the towns?" I riffed, borrowing from Casablanca without shame. "Too long," she said, pulling back to search my face. "We have to catch up." Her eyes sparkled with excitement. "Come on, let's grab coffee." My treat. I hesitated only a moment before nodding. The rain continued tapping against the windows, so the cafe next door felt like fate. We ordered cappuccinos, her with extra foam, me with just a dash of cinnamon, and found a small table by the front window. Steam curled from our mugs, softening the edges of the world outside. We slipped into conversation as though no time had passed. She told me about her career in marketing, the startup she'd launched, the city she'd lived in. I told her about Brookfield, our house on Maple Street, our daughter Nora's braces appointment, our son Jace's newfound obsession with dinosaurs. Between sips, we laughed at college anecdotes, late attempts to hack professors' grading software, the time we convinced half the campus to join a midnight food truck raid. A gust of wind rattled the window panes, and I glanced at my watch. I'd spent 30 seconds, or 30 minutes. Time felt elastic when I was with her. I felt lighter, as if the weight of bills and deadlines had loosened. But beneath the nostalgia, a question stirred at the edges of my mind. Why now? Why today? Before I could form the thought, she leaned forward, eyes dancing. "Griff, you have to see something." She fished her phone from her bag, thumbs flying. "I've got news." I raised an eyebrow. "News?" She grinned, tilting the phone screen toward me. "I'm getting married in 3 months." A jolt of surprise shot through me, but I forced a congratulatory smile. "That's great, Talia. Really great." Wait, she said, swiping through photos. "His name's Brody. Dreamboat, right?" I nodded, still scanning her face, and then the rainy street outside. My coffee had grown lukewarm, the cinnamon foam a memory on my tongue. I should have felt happiness for her, of course I should. But something in her eyes told me this was more than a casual announcement. It was a milestone she wanted me to share. She handed me the phone. "Here, look at this." I unlocked the screen and froze. My thumb caught on a familiar curve of dark hair, a flash of a smile I knew better than my own. There, on her fiancé's arm, was my wife, Callie, wrapped around him like a melody I'd once recognized but couldn't place. She wore that maroon coat I'd bought her for Christmas, the one she complained was too bold. My stomach clenched as I stared, disoriented. This wasn't a stranger's bride. It was the woman I'd kissed 2 nights ago before falling asleep to the hum of our daughter's monitor. I blinked at the picture, then looked up at Talia, voice caught in my throat. "Is that—" Talia beamed. "Isn't she stunning?" "He's lucky. Brody adores her." My mind whirled. Callie and I had been talking about weekend plans, soccer practice, maybe a weekend away next month. We had a 10-year-old daughter, Nora, and a 6-year-old son, Jace. Our life was comfortable, predictable. I kissed her goodbye this morning before my team meeting. Yet here she was, in this photograph, smiling as if I didn't exist. The cafe's chatter dimmed in my ears. Talia's voice continued, but her words dissolved. I traced the shape of Callie's laughter in the pixels, the way her eyes crinkled. A cold twist curled in my chest. Something fractured. Talia, oblivious, flipped to the next picture, a weekend trip to a ski lodge, snow dusting every chairlift. Callie's laughter echoed in that image, too, as bright as sunlight on ice. My breath came shallow. The chair scraped on the floor as I stood, phone still in hand. I'm sorry, I stumbled. I need some air. Talia's brow furrowed. Griffin, I didn't wait. I bolted from the cafe, pushing through the door into the rain. The storm greeted me like an old friend, cold and unrelenting. My shoes squelched on the pavement as I ran, phone in my pocket, heart pounding a frantic tattoo. I didn't glance back. I didn't think. All I knew was that something fundamental had shifted, and I was left clutching the fragments of a truth I never wanted to see. The cafe's window steamed with condensation as the rain tapped a steady rhythm outside, but inside, the world shifted on its axis. We were halfway through our cappuccinos, Talia's frothy mountain of foam already reduced to a thin ring around the cup's edge, mine barely touched, when she leaned forward, eyes bright as polished amber. I'm getting married in 3 months, she announced, voice light and jubilant, as though she were unveiling a secret treasure rather than a life-altering milestone. The words landed somewhere beyond my comprehension. I blinked, heart thudding against my ribs, and managed a distracted smile. Of course, I congratulated her. How could I not? Talia deserved every happiness, every triumph after all these years. But even as I nodded, a tremor of unease crawled up my spine, cold and insistent. She tapped her phone with practiced ease, swiping through screens until she found what she wanted. His name's Brody, she said, tilting the device toward me. Brody Marks. Total dreamboat. The phone's glow illuminated her face, framing her features in warm light. I should have felt relief, an old friend moving on, charting a new course. Instead, a knot tightened in my gut. When she handed me the phone, my fingers shook. I expected a handsome stranger in a crisp blazer, someone I'd never met. But the image that filled the screen stopped my breath cold. There, arm in arm with a tall, broad-shouldered man whose smile was dazzling enough to double as stage lights, was Callie. My Callie. Her maroon coat draped elegantly over his arm, her hair curled just so, framing her face in soft, deliberate waves. She looked radiant, like she was glowing from the inside out. My stomach lurched, and I struggled to breathe through the sudden weight settling over my chest. Talia chattered on, oblivious to my internal collapse. They met through mutual friends at an industry conference. Her voice faded to a distant echo, and last month he proposed on a weekend getaway in the Caribbean. Images scrolled by. Callie clutching a glass of champagne on a balcony overlooking turquoise waters, sun-kissed and laughing. The two of them bundled against snow on a ski trip, arms entwined, cheeks flushed with cold. A candid shot of them strolling through lavender fields, petals brushing their coats. Each photo felt like a betrayal, a confession I never asked for. The life I thought I shared with my wife was a mirage. Behind my back, she built a secret existence filled with love, laughter, and commitments in which I held no part. My hands curled into fists around the phone, knuckles whitening as I read the captions. Forever starts now. Brody plus Callie, counting down the days. My vision tunneled, the cafe's ambient murmur dissolving into static. Talia paused, glancing from the screen to my face. Her gaze sharpened with concern. Griffin, are you okay? I forced a smile that tasted like bile. Yeah, I croaked, voice unsteady. I handed back the phone as though its glow would burn my fingers. That's amazing. But her triumph felt like a dagger twisting in my gut. Talia reached out to steady my hand, confusion furrowing her brow. You look pale. Do you want water? I shook my head, every instinct screaming to flee. But I stayed, rooted to the spot by shock and a desperate need for clarity. For years. I asked, voice low. You said you met him 2 years ago? Her laugh came soft and untroubled. No, Griff. Almost 4 years. I lost count of time. We drifted apart during college. She leaned back, sliding a napkin across the table, oblivious to the shards falling through my chest. He's perfect, Griffin. You'd love him. Perfect. The word echoed in my mind like an accusation. My life, our life, had been a comfortable routine. Soccer games, bedtime stories, Sunday morning pancakes. I thought it was enough. But apparently not. Callie had wanted more, a life that, in my memory, didn't exist. Talia continued, pulling up another album. Look at this one, Brotherly Getaway at Aspen. They haven't missed a season in years. I stared at a photo of Callie and Brody riding the gondola, snow-laden pines behind them, both bundled in matching scarves. The way she looked at him. Adoration unfiltered, trust unguarded. In that gaze, I saw a world I'd never entered, a vow I'd never heard. I stood, topping off my cappuccino with a sharp exhalation. The chair scraped against the floor, eyes turning toward me in mild curiosity. Talia, I said quietly, voice steadier than I felt. Thank you for sharing this with me. A lie. I was furious, heartbroken, and utterly unmoored. I need some air. She bit her lip, concern and confusion warring in her expression. Griff, wait. I didn't look back. The cafe's door swung open, and the rain greeted me like an omen. It plastered my coat to my skin as I crossed the sidewalk, each step echoing with questions. How could she lie for so long? How many mornings had I awakened next to a stranger? What had I done wrong? The rhythm of the raindrops matched my heartbeat, urgent, unpredictable. I kept walking until the fog on the pavement blurred the lights into halos. My phone buzzed, Talia's name on the screen, but I ignored it. Water streamed down my face, indistinguishable from the tears I refused to let fall. My breath came shallow, lungs burning with confusion and betrayal. I realized then that my life had been a story I didn't understand, that the narrative I'd trusted was someone else's. Standing in the downpour, I made a silent vow. I would uncover the truth. Everything. Every secret text, every hidden residence, every whispered plan. Then I would decide if the love I thought I knew could survive this revelation. But for now, I let the rain soak through my clothes and cleanse the shock from my veins, one cold drop at a time. I stared at the phone screen as if it were a piece of evidence from a crime scene, every new image pushing me further beneath an invisible weight. Talia's voice drifted in and out, like muffled music through a closed door, and I could barely make out her words. She scrolled through photo after photo, snapshots of laughter, ski slopes, sunsets behind vineyard trellises. And every time Callie appeared, I felt the air thin around me. I wanted to look away, but something, some primal need to understand, kept my eyes locked on that screen. A cold sweat broke out across my forehead. The cafe's hum faded into silence save for the rapid pounding of my heart. In the pictures, Callie's smile was constant, radiant, unashamed. She clung to Brody as though he were the very thing sustaining her. The maroon coat I'd bought her last Christmas shimmered in almost every frame, a stark reminder that those memories I'd invested in, buying her presents, planning anniversaries, choosing gifts with thoughtful care, had become props in someone else's life. My lungs felt constricted, as though I were submerged beneath a surface too heavy to break. I could taste the metallic tang of fear in my mouth. Breathing became an effort, a slow, laborious act that felt utterly foreign. The world around me seemed to tilt, cafe tables and chairs angling toward a vanishing point at the center of the storm whipping inside my chest. I blinked, but tears welled in my eyes, blurring the lines between Talia's concerned face and the vibrant scenes of betrayal on her phone. She glanced up, eyebrows knitting together. Griffin, you okay? Her concern snapped me back, though it did nothing to ease the crushing weight. I swallowed, throat constricted. I need a moment. My voice sounded small, strangled by the sudden panic. I couldn't tell her how this felt, how every breath burned, how the memories of our 10 years together, our wedding vows, Nora's birth, Jace's first words, seemed to slip through my fingers like water dripping through a cracked glass. I stood, each movement a battle against the vertigo that threatened to send me tumbling. Talia reached out, but I shook my head, vision swimming. The cafe's door gleamed in the distance, a promise of fresh air and something like relief. I braced my hands against the edge of the table, knuckles white, and took a single, trembling step back. My chair scraped the floor, loud as thunder in the sudden hush. I'm sorry, I murmured before turning on unsteady feet and pushing the door open. Rain sluiced down the awning outside, and I huddled beneath it, coat soaked through within seconds. The cold air hit my face like shards of ice, sharp and immediate, and for the first time in what felt like hours, I could draw a full breath. It burned, but it was real. My chest heaved as if I'd been sprinting through a storm, and I let the rain mix with tears jogging down my cheeks. Images from the photo swirled in my mind. Callie's laughter, her hand resting on Brody's arm, the way her eyes crinkled at the corners. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass of the bookstore window, the surface slick beneath my palms. The neon open sign flickered, casting red and green shards of light over my soaked coat. Inside, Talia's voice cut through. "Griffin? Please tell me you're all right." I closed my eyes, listening to the rhythm of raindrops on the pavement. It was both torture and salve, the steady percussion forcing me to focus on anything but the images that haunted me. Breathe in. Breathe out. In. Out. Each cycle was a struggle, but also a reminder. I was alive, painfully alive, and that reality gave me a sliver of power. A taxi rolled by, tires hissing against wet asphalt. People dashed through the rain with umbrellas, heads bowed, oblivious to the drama unfolding on the sidewalk. I envied their ignorance, their simple lives continuing undisturbed. I pressed a hand to my chest, feeling my pulse hammering like an alarm bell. If I didn't act fast, I would drown in this betrayal. I thought of Callie. The gentle way she tucked Nora in at night, the satisfied sigh she gave after a successful dinner she'd cooked, the way her eyes met mine when we whispered, "I love you," at the end of a long day. Those images battled the ones on Talia's phone, creating a maelstrom in my mind. Which was the real Callie? The wife I married, who shared my bed and my dreams? Or the woman who'd built a joyous life with someone else, under a name I barely recognized? A steady breath finally came, a ragged gasp that felt like survival. I pulled my phone from my pocket, thumb hovering over Talia's name in the recent list. I wanted to apologize, to explain, to demand she erase those photos from my memory. But more than that, I needed facts. I needed proof that I wasn't insane, hallucinating my wife's betrayal. I needed a way to uncover every hidden secret, every falsehood she'd spoken, every moment she'd spent rewriting our history with Brody as co-author. The rain slowed to a drizzle, and I lifted my face to the sky, raindrops clinging to my lashes. I closed my eyes and let the world recede into the steady pulse of water. Beneath the ache of betrayal, I felt a spark, small and fragile, but real. A spark of resolve. I would not remain submerged. I would surface, screaming if I had to, until the truth was laid bare. Stepping back into the cafe felt like crossing an invisible threshold. The warmth washed over me, but the knot in my chest remained. Talia's worried eyes met mine as I approached. I squared my shoulders, drawing on the last dregs of calm I could find. "I'm sorry," I said, voice firmer now though still low. "I'm okay." But I wasn't okay. Not yet. The storm inside me raged on, and I knew that escaping it required more than shallow reassurances. It required courage, confrontation, and the willingness to face every terrible truth. As I sank back into my chair, I braced for the first step of that journey, one breath at a time. The narrow stall was colder than the cafe, its fluorescent light harsh and unforgiving as I closed the door behind me. I locked it with a practiced click and leaned back against the cool metal, heart pounding in my ears like a jackhammer on concrete. My palms were slick with sweat despite the chill, and I rested them on my thighs, still clad in damp suit trousers I barely noticed. The smell of antiseptic and stale air filled my nostrils, yet all I could think about was Callie's face in those photos, the curve of her smile as she leaned into Brody, the way her eyes lit up at his presence, as though I'd never existed. Sitting on the closed toilet lid felt sacrilegious and strangely comforting, as if the flimsy porcelain could somehow ground me. I closed my eyes and pressed my hands over them, breathing shallowly. For years she'd been weaving a secret life, building memories with another man in hotels, cabins, vineyards. Places we'd once promised to visit together, hand in hand. The betrayal stung sharper than any cut. I could almost feel the blade twisting inside my chest. I wrapped my arms around my torso, as though I could hold myself together by will alone. I tried to recall the last time Callie had told me a half-truth or avoided a question. She'd grown distant lately, distracted by wellness retreats and networking workshops in Chicago, she'd said, each excuse plausible, each trip at least nominally work-related. And I'd believed her, too wrapped up in my own routines to notice the threadbare seams in her stories. My daughter's school play, my son's dentist appointment, code reviews and project deadlines, all. A sudden wave of anger crashed through me, and I banged my fist against the stall wall. The hollow knock echoed back, mocking me. How dare she compartmentalize our marriage like some disposable file, relegating me to a single folder in the archive of her life. The children, Nora and Jace, deserved better. They looked to their mother for guidance, for love. They deserved the truth. I slid my hands down to my knees and clenched the fabric of my trousers until my knuckles turned white. I closed my eyes again, searching for calm. I pictured Nora's laugh as she tumbled off the slide in our backyard, grass-stained knees and a triumphant grin. I imagined Jace's arms wrapping around my neck, breathless from excitement after he conquered his fear on his tricycle. They had no idea their mother was living a double life, planning her future with another man in another city. Their mother, the woman who kissed them goodnight and wiped their tears, was also someone else entirely. The duality felt monstrous. My chest tightened as tears stung my closed eyelids, and I wiped one away with a trembling finger. I hadn't allowed myself to cry yet, not in front of Talia, not out there under the rain. But here, alone, the dam broke. Hot tears mingled with the cold drip from the leaky ceiling vent, and I let myself sob softly, each hiccup of sound a release of the betrayal that crawled beneath my skin. I remembered our wedding day, sun-drenched vows, the laughter in our friends' eyes, the promise to weather every storm together. Now here I was, in a dingy bathroom, drowning in the wreckage of a vow she'd apparently abandoned long ago. I swallowed hard and drew a ragged breath, willing the tears to stop so I could think. I needed a plan, facts, proof, leverage. I would track every hotel reservation, every email thread, every coded reference to her maiden name in that new apartment in Springfield. It wouldn't be enough to confront her with photos. I needed incontrovertible evidence. I'd reach out to Jeremy, my old friend with that sharp investigative instinct. He'd find the records I needed, trace the financial trail, map out Callie's double life with military precision. Standing up felt like emerging from a long, dark tunnel. My legs wobbled, but I steadied myself against the sink cabinet. I splashed cold water on my face, blinking away the last sheen of tears, and examined my reflection. The man staring back had hollowed eyes and pale skin, but also a spark of resolve. I straightened my shoulders, zipped my coat, and unlocked the stall door. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, and every step back to Talia's side felt purposeful. I would not be swallowed by this betrayal. I would fight for the truth, for my children, for the man I still hoped I could be. And when Callie faced me next, I would be ready. Night had already settled into a hushed calm by the time I slipped through the front door, the house dimly lit by the glow of a single lamp in the hallway. The kids were asleep, Nora's steady breathing drifting from her bedroom, Jace's faint snore echoing from his bed. Callie had told me she'd be out with her friends again, another girls' night she'd claimed was part of some women's empowerment circle. I closed the door gently behind me, heart pounding with guilt and anticipation. I wasn't proud of what I was about to do, but the ache of betrayal left me no choice. I needed answers. I found her laptop, sleek and silver, resting on the corner of the desk in our home office, half hidden beneath a pile of unopened mail and a stack of recipe magazines. My pulse ticked louder as I sat down and powered it on. The screen brightened, and I hesitated, thumb hovering above the trackpad. My reflection stared back at me, worn, hollow-eyed, determined. I clicked her user account and entered the password she had never changed, the one she'd chosen when we first set up our shared Wi-Fi network. The desktop was cluttered with folders, work documents, family photos, the children's art projects. I opened her browser. The history was unnaturally sparse, a clean slate that suggested a deliberate purge. No social media sites, no travel bookings, no shopping logs, nothing that hinted at late-night plane reservations or weekend retreats. It was as if she'd scrubbed her entire online trail. My stomach twisted in knots. If she'd gone to the trouble of erasing everything, the truth must lie somewhere else. I minimized the browser window and clicked into the iCloud icon. It prompted for her account password, which I knew she used for our shared photo stream. I entered it, holding my breath. Access granted. A folder named Photos opened before me, thumbnails scattering the screen like stars in a dark sky. I scrolled slowly, watching the images fill the pane. Family vacations, birthday celebrations, holiday dinners, our life, pixel by pixel. Relief and anxiety warred inside me. Here was proof of every cherished memory I'd built with her. But did it also contain the evidence of her secret? I typed Brody into the search field, not entirely believing the results would yield anything. The folder gleamed as it processed, then populated with images I'd never seen before. There were candid snapshots of Callie and Brody at a wine festival, glasses raised in toasts, the golden light of sunset glinting off their faces. They danced in a garden party under string lights, Brody laughing as Callie's head lolled back in delight. I clicked one image, then another, photos dating back months, even years. A winter holiday at a ski lodge, two figures bundled together on a balcony overlooking a snow-blanketed forest. She wore the maroon coat again, the one I recognized from that first photo in the cafe. A fresh wave of betrayal crashed over me. Each image felt like a confession. She'd chosen to document this life, to save these moments for later, even as she pretended they didn't exist. My vision blurred with unshed tears as I scrolled through beach resort pictures, sun loungers by turquoise waves, a champagne bottle popping open against a coral sky. The captions she had added, "Best weekend ever," "Brody's surprise picnic," "Counting down," were written in her own handwriting, proof she had planned and celebrated every stolen moment. My hands shook, but I forced myself to keep scrolling until I found something other than photos, a folder labeled Receipts. I clicked it and watched files load, hotel invoices, event tickets, flight confirmations. There it was, a PDF of a booking at the Foxridge Vineyard in Springfield, a deposit paid in full under the name Callie Monroe. My heart caught. She had reserved the ceremony venue, the rehearsal dinner, even the weekend lodging. I hovered over the file, then opened it, feeling the fabric of my world unravel with each line. Beneath the heading was the date, June 12, 2025, less than a month away. Detailed breakdown, venue fee, catering costs, floral arrangements, photography package. Next to it, a confirmation number. I traced my finger down the page to the contact information, an email address I had never heard, calliemonroe.wed@gmail.com. She was planning this wedding in her own name, her maiden name, erasing me entirely from the story she was writing. I closed the PDF and leaned back, the chair creaking under my weight. My vision swam with thoughts of legal separation, custody battles, financial fallout. I felt a surge of panic. If I didn't act soon, she'd be legally and socially bound to Brody before I could stop her. Yet another chill washed over me. I had to be methodical. I minimized the receipts folder and reopened the photo stream. I copied the entire Brody and Callie folder to a USB drive beside me. Raw evidence I could take to Jeremy, my friend who owed me a favor from a coding gig I did for him years ago. His investigative instincts would map every detail, the timeline, the finances, the hidden apartment in Springfield. With the files transferring, I opened my phone and typed a quick message to Jeremy. "Call me. Urgent. It's about Callie. Can't talk here." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. My fingers hovered over the keyboard again as I deleted her search history, clearing every trace of what I'd found. I had to protect my evidence. I had to safeguard my next steps. The USB transfer completed, and I removed the drive, tapping it against my palm as if its weight could anchor me. I shut the laptop and stood, every muscle tense. I tiptoed out of the home office, pushing the door closed so softly I doubted even the hinges registered it. Down the hallway, I paused at the children's bedrooms, glancing in at their sleeping forms. Their chests rose and fell in innocent rhythm, oblivious to the storm brewing just outside their door. I ducked into our bedroom and slid the USB into my pocket, then glanced at the closet door where Callie's coats hung. Among them was that maroon coat, now a symbol of her deception. I resisted the urge to touch it or breathe in her scent. Instead, I turned away, tracing a path down the stairs and through the living room. My pulse hammered in my ears as I crossed the threshold into the night. Outside, the air was cool and scented with rain-soaked pavements. I looked up at the house we'd built together, knowing the foundation had cracked beneath my feet. But I held the USB drive like a lifeline. The files inside represented truth, facts I could no longer ignore. As I walked to my car, I realized that the path ahead would be messy and painful. But for the first time since that fateful cafe reunion, I felt a flicker of control. I had the evidence. Now, I had to decide how to use it. And then I would find out if the life I thought I shared with Callie could survive the reckoning I planned to deliver. The morning light felt intrusive as it filtered through the blinds, slicing warm bars across the hardwood floors of my home office. My phone buzzed incessantly with routine notifications, project deadlines, news alerts, a reminder from my dentist, but I ignored them all. Instead, I stared at the black screen, palm sweating. I needed someone I could trust, someone who could turn these fragments of betrayal into a coherent map. I dialed Jeremy, my old college buddy who'd reinvented himself as a private investigator after a brief, ill-fated stint in finance. "Griff," he answered on the second ring, voice gravelly with sleep. "What's up, man?" I drew in a breath that felt like inhaling shards of glass. "Jeremy, I need your help. It's Callie." I paused, gathering courage. "She's been living a double life." Silence crackled between us before he spoke, tone sharpening. "Slow down. What do you mean?" I told him about the photos Talia had shown me, the unexpected reunion, the shock of seeing Callie entwined with Brody. As I spoke, the words poured out in a rush, my disbelief, my rage, the dusty ache of betrayal that had settled in my chest 2 days ago. I described the late-night iCloud dive, the receipt folder, the vineyard booking. By the time I finished, my voice was raw. "Give me 48 hours, Jeremy said flatly, and before I could press for details, he hung up. I stared at the dial tone, heart pounding. 2 days. 2 days to unravel Callie's carefully constructed facade. I sat back in my chair, letting the memory of her smile and those photos wash over me. I pictured her laughter as it must have resonated in that small Springfield apartment, shared solitude, whispered secrets, the everyday comfort of a shared life. I shut my eyes, willing the world to return to the quiet hum of my routine, but it refused. The image of her in that maroon coat, arm hooked through Brody's, refused to fade. I organized my desk into zones, the open laptop on the left, my notepad in the center, and, on the right, the small USB drive containing the raw evidence. Photos, receipts, hotel invoices, the confirmation email for the Fox Ridge Vineyard. I needed a plan to use this information, legally, strategically, to confront her. But first, I would let Jeremy work his magic. By mid-afternoon, my inbox pinged with the first of his updates. His email was succinct, a dossier on Brody Marks, complete with addresses, employment history, social media profiles, and the name of their building manager. He'd uncovered that Brody's apartment was leased under the name of an LLC tied to a shell company, which explained the half-year rental without standard background checks. He attached surveillance photos from the property, Callie entering with a suitcase, another set of images showing her smiling as she swiped a keycard. My pulse spiked. These were the very images I'd needed to cement the reality of her deception. Next, Jeremy sent me a spreadsheet tracking Callie's transactions, the credit card receipts she'd ignored or forgotten to delete. Payments to boutique hotels in Chicago, weekend Airbnb stays near Lake Tahoe, a series of cover charges at a spa in Rome, apparently designed as executive retreats. Each line item felt like a betrayal logged in cold, impersonal numbers. He flagged one transaction, a ring purchase from a jeweler in Springfield, ruby-infused band, timestamped precisely 6 weeks before Talia's announcement. I stared at the spreadsheet, imagining the confirmation that had arrived in her inbox. "Thank you for your purchase. Your engagement ring will be ready for pickup on May 10th. My voice caught at the memory of her slipping that ring onto another man's finger. As the hours passed, Jeremy's next email was an attached PDF. A copy of the Fox Ridge Vineyard contract, meticulously redacted except for the fields that mattered, the wedding date, the names, the payment schedule. But what struck me most was the line item for the intimate rehearsal dinner, specifying a maximum guest list of 50. The people she planned to honor, friends, family, co-workers, would toast this new chapter without so much as a whispered apology to the man she legally still called husband. By the end of the day, Jeremy texted an address, a P.O. box in Springfield registered under her maiden name, used for RSVP returns and vendor inquiries. He also included a link to a LinkedIn page for a Callie Monroe at Avion Wealth. It matched Brody's profile. They'd worked together briefly before she left to start her wellness retreat company. Every piece fit like tessellated tiles in a mosaic, until the image became too clear to ignore. I closed my laptop and sank lower in my chair, the gravity of it all pressing down. Questions I'd kept at base surfaced in rapid succession. How long had she planned this? How many nights had she returned to our bed, silent with secrets? How could she look in the mirror and pretend our vows still held meaning? My phone buzzed again, this time from Talia. A simple message, "Thinking of you. Call me if you need." I stared at her name, grateful for her warmth but uncertain of my next move. Should I ask her for more details about the first time she'd noticed Callie and Brody together? Should I seek her corroboration? Or was it time to confront Callie with legal counsel by my side? I rubbed my eyes, fatigued from hours of forensic analysis, and remembered the children waiting for Dad to read them bedtime stories. My guilt for turning our home into a clandestine investigation weighed heavily. Despite everything, I still loved them fiercely. They deserved the truth as much as I did. But I knew one thing. I couldn't salvage what Callie had shattered. Not now. Not without exposing every lie. I drafted an email to my lawyer. Concise, factual, attached the most damning evidence. Brochure photos, the vineyard contract, the spreadsheets. In the subject line, I typed, "Immediate consultation, marital separation." My hands trembled slightly as I hit send. Night fell swiftly, and with it, a cold determination settled in my chest. I paced between my desk and the living room, each step measured, every reversal of direction echoing the turmoil in my mind. I imagined delivering the dossier to Callie, watching her face as I laid out the proof. The shock, the guilt, the inevitable questions she'd have to answer. I knew confrontation would break us both, but the lies demanded to be confronted. I paused by the window, looking out at the quiet street. The porch light cast a golden pool on the sidewalk, the world beyond hushed and unaware of the storm raging in my heart. I patted the USB in my pocket, a lifeline in a sea of deceit. In 2 days, I'd have every last detail mapped out, every secret cataloged. And then, I would face her. For now, I drew a steadying breath and allowed myself one moment of reluctant acceptance, my life as I knew it was over. In its place lay a path I had to walk alone, with grief as my companion and truth as my guide. And when the time came, I would walk it with my head held high, ready to rebuild what remained or to begin anew. I eased my car to a stop across the street from the red brick facade of Springfield Heights Apartments, heart hammering so loud I feared it would wake the whole block. I'd taken the day off, citing a personal emergency to my boss, and driven 2 hours east with nothing but my camera phone and a bottled water. Jeremy's tip had been precise, apartment 4B. For the past hour, I'd watched through the rain-speckled windshield, teaching myself to breathe slowly despite the storm of dread and rage churning in my gut. The building's faded numbers glowed under a flickering street lamp, and every passing car sent ripples of reflection across the glass. I checked the time, 6:47 p.m. exactly as Jeremy predicted. I clasped the steering wheel, knuckles white, and leaned forward. The sidewalk was empty until a silver sedan coasted in next to the curb, engine ticking as it cooled. The passenger door opened, and there she was, Callie, in a soft beige coat, hair curled into loose waves just as she'd styled it for our daughter's last birthday party. For a heartbeat, my mind refused to let me believe it was her, but then she stepped onto the pavement, umbrella in hand, and my breath caught. She moved with the same grace I'd cherished every morning as she padded into the kitchen to make coffee, yet every step she took that night struck me like betrayal incarnate. Brody appeared at the top of the stairs, wearing a tailored navy suit that made him look impossibly confident. He stretched out his hand to steady her as she slid down the last step, and they shared a greeting that was too intimate for a chance encounter. Brody's smile softened as he brushed a stray lock of hair from Callie's face, and she tilted into him, closing her eyes. The gesture was so tender it made my chest ache. I gripped my phone, thumb hovering over the shutter button, stunned at how small I felt. Not just physically behind the wheel, but in every corner of my life I'd thought secure. My hands shook as I raised the phone to capture the moment. Flashbulbs shouldn't be necessary in the rain, but the screen's glow was enough. I snapped one photo, Callie leaning into Brody's embrace, her eyes closed, expression blissful. Another, Brody's arm wrapped around her waist, umbrella barely covering them both. Each click felt like a verdict, final and unalterable. I forced myself to focus on the details. The way her coat billowed in the breeze, the glint of a ring on her left hand, the gentle tilt of Brody's head as he whispered something that made her laugh. That laugh, the sound I'd longed to hear in our own kitchen, echoed in my mind as proof of my own erasure. They turned toward the lobby door, and for a moment I considered confronting them there, demanding answers on the cold steps under the street lamp. But my despair was tempered by a flicker of control. If I stormed in, I'd blow my cover, and I needed every advantage. Instead, I took more photos, each one a slice of evidence. Brody holding the door open, their intertwined hands as they disappeared behind the frosted glass. I watched the light go out, waited another 30 seconds just to be sure they weren't returning, then slid out of the car. The pavement was slick, and I paused at the edge of the sidewalk, phone still in hand, breathing the night air. The apartment lobby door swung shut, muffling their voices to indistinct murmurs. I felt the distance of the city around me, street lamps marching down empty blocks, the distant hum of interstate traffic, the anonymous glow of apartment windows. None of it was mine. None of it belonged to the life I'd shared with Callie. I crouched beside a faded planter box, using its rim for support, and reviewed the photos. Each one confirmed a truth I'd hoped wasn't real. My jaw clenched as I considered the next steps. I could forward these images to Jeremy as supplemental proof, perhaps strengthen the timeline of deception. I could show them to Talia, ensure that my friend understood the full scope of the betrayal. And eventually, I'd have to face Callie herself, present this irrefutable record of her double life. Part of me recoiled at the prospect of what that confrontation would entail, shouting in the rain, tears and threats and accusations, but another part felt fierce relief at having proof I could no longer deny. I rose slowly, the planter box scraping against the soles of my shoes. I pocketed my phone and ran a hand through my damp hair, tasting victory laced with sorrow. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt hollowed, as though the shutter of betrayal had closed in my soul. But I also felt ready. Ready to return home with every secret laid bare, ready to dismantle the future she'd built behind my back. Standing in the rain-slicked street, I looked back at the building's dark windows and whispered a vow. I would uncover every hidden address, every secret alias, every false alibi. I would reclaim my life and protect our children from this wreckage. And when the time came to unveil the truth, I would be armed not with heartbreak alone, but with proof so undeniable that she could no longer hide behind her half-truths. With that resolve burning in my chest, I walked back to my car, each step echoing on the pavement. The car door closed with a firm click behind me, sealing in the cold night air and the weight of my discovery. I started the engine and pulled away from Springfield Heights Apartments, headlights cutting arcs through the darkness. The drive home stretched ahead 2 hours to process, to plan, to steel myself for the reckoning I'd set in motion. The road was long, but I was no longer lost. I had a direction, clear as the photos in my phone. Onward, until every secret was brought into the light. I didn't collapse into rage the night I returned from Springfield Heights Apartments. Instead, I let the room's silence settle around me, sharp and electric, and drew a slow breath as though inhaling the tension itself. I closed the front door behind me, careful not to wake the children, and leaned my shoulder against the cool wood, mind racing through every detail I'd captured, the gentle sweep of Callie's beige coat, the casual intimacy of her touch on Brody's shoulder, the way she'd disappeared behind that frosted glass with him at her side. The evidence lay in my pocket on a tiny USB drive, but I needed more than raw data. I needed a way to deliver the truth so that she couldn't unravel it with excuses or tears. I needed a plan. I sat at my desk, the lamp casting a yellow pool of light over paperwork and coffee-stained notes. My computer screen glowed with unread emails from my lawyer and Jeremy's latest intelligence report. I minimized every window until only a blank document remained, cursor blinking expectantly. I typed confrontation plan at the top, and then paused, considering my approach. Confrontation would be messy, inevitably so, but the objective was not to humiliate her. It was to force honesty and protect our children from further deception. I distilled my strategy into 3 phases: gather allies, set the stage, and execute the reveal. The first phase was simple yet essential. I needed Talia's emotional support and corroboration. I messaged her at dawn. "Talia, can we talk? Lunch Saturday? Griffin." Her reply came almost instantly. "Of course. Anything." I felt relief at her warmth. She had unwittingly become the spark that ignited this investigation, and now I needed her as witness. I planned to share with her every photo, every receipt, every hotel invoice, so that when the second phase began, I would have a trusted friend by my side to temper my anger and ensure the facts remained clear. Phase 2 required setting the stage for confrontation. I arranged a dinner at our favorite bistro, the one with the dark wood booths and candlelit tables where Callie and I had shared countless anniversaries. I sent her a text under the guise of an olive branch. "Hey, babe, let's do dinner Friday. Just you and me." She responded with a heart emoji and "sounds perfect." She didn't suspect a thing, and I chose that restaurant because its intimacy would leave no room for polite deflection. I reserved a table in a quiet corner near the window, where I could see the entrance and watch her reaction when I brought in the third seat. I sent Jeremy a final note. Stand by for coordination Friday evening. The final phase would play out like a carefully choreographed scene in a theater. The lights dim. The actors take their places. The truth is revealed. On Friday afternoon, I purchased a small flash drive of my own and copied the most damning files. The high-resolution images of Callie and Brody, the receipt for the vineyard, the spreadsheet of charge patterns, into a folder labeled simply Everything. I rehearsed my opening line in the car as I drove to work, fingers drumming on the steering wheel. I think we should invite someone else tonight. I imagined Callie's smile faltering, her brow knitting with confusion, the way her own words might betray guilt. That evening, I dressed carefully in a navy blazer and crisp white shirt, clothes that spoke of stability, of the life I'd built, and the devotion I'd given. I collected the flash drive and slipped it into my jacket pocket along with my phone. At 6 o'clock sharp, I arrived at the bistro and checked in with the host. She led me to the table for two that had candlelight flickering across its surface. I placed the small drive next to my water glass and sat, smoothing my jacket. My pulse beat a steady drum of anticipation. When the waiter arrived to confirm my order, I asked for 2 sparkling waters and a shared appetizer, ensuring there would be a lull before Callie's entrance. I glanced at the door, watching straw-colored hair and familiar silhouettes in the streetlight. My mind looped through every question I needed to ask. When did you last feel guilty? How long were you going to keep this from me? What did our vows mean to you? But more than anger, I felt a cold determination to extract the unvarnished truth. I owed our children that. I owed myself that. At 6:12, the door opened and Callie slipped inside, radiant in a soft blue dress that contrasted sharply with the maroon and beige coats of her secret life. She spotted me, and her smile brightened, then faltered as she wondered at my solemn expression. She slid into the chair beside mine, murmuring "Sorry I'm late," as she angled for a kiss I refused. The waiter returned to top off our waters, and I asked for a third-place setting. Confusion flickered across her face when the waiter raised an eyebrow and placed another napkin and set of utensils at the opposite side of the table. I waited, letting the silence stretch until Talia stepped in behind her. She smiled politely at Callie, who turned to face her old friend in dawning horror. "Griff told me you two needed to talk," Talia said quietly, as though reading stage directions. Callie's voice caught in her throat, and she looked at me, eyes wide, mouth parted. I slid the flash drive across the table and said, "This has everything. I figured you two should start here." I watched Callie's shoulders slump as she took the drive, her facade crumbling in the candlelight. Talia settled into the third chair, her presence a silent testament to the truth I'd unearthed. I took a sip of water, letting the tension settle, and met Callie's gaze. The restaurant's din faded, the world narrowing to 3 figures at a candlelit table. The confrontation had begun. Friday night carried a peculiar tension as I stepped into Bistro Lumen, the soft murmur of dinner conversations and clink of glasses greeting me like the overture to a play. My heart thudded against my ribs in measured anticipation, each beat marking the seconds until I would force the truth into the open. The host led me past darkwood booths bathed in candlelight to the corner table I'd reserved, and I smoothed my jacket, arranging the small flash drive beside my water glass. I met the host's eyes, offering a polite smile, and she nodded before slipping away to seat the next guests. I took a slow breath and reached for my glass, swirling the water as though it were wine. The flicker of the candle cast dancing shadows across the table, as if warning me of the drama to come. My gaze flicked to the door every few seconds, anticipation sharpening every sense. The faint scent of olive oil and garlic in the air, the distant scrape of a chair leg, the low hum of laughter that felt too casual for the storm I'd summoned. I ran through my mental checklist one more time. Flash drive loaded, Talia ready, questions primed. At precisely 6:12 p.m., the door opened, and Callie stepped inside. She held her coat draped elegantly over her arm, her hair falling in soft waves around her face. For an instant, she scanned the room, smiling when her eyes landed on me. Her smile faltered when she noticed the third place setting already waiting, an extra napkin, an unworn fork. I lifted my hand in a casual wave. "Hi," I said, voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. "Glad you could make it." She approached with curiosity coloring her expression. "You said just the two of us," she murmured, voice soft as she sank into the seat beside me. Her perfume, familiar, comforting, was tinged with uncertainty now. "Is everything okay?" I gestured to the place across from me. "Actually, I invited someone else." My tone was calm, measured. I watched her eyes track over the empty chair, over the spare napkin, and her lips parted in confusion. Before she could respond, Talia slipped in behind her and greeted her with a gentle "Hey, Callie." Talia's arrival felt like a sunbeam cutting through clouds, the friend who'd witnessed the first cracks in our facade, now a witness to the reckoning I'd forced. Callie turned to face her old classmate, eyes wide. "Talia," she whispered, voice trembling. The waitress hovered, uncertain, as Talia slid into the third chair. I reached into my jacket and produced the flash drive. Its black plastic surface seemed incongruous with the elegance of the restaurant. I laid it on the table with deliberate precision. "This," I said quietly, "contains everything." My tone carried no accusation, only the weight of truth. Photos, receipts, hotel bookings, contracts. Evidence of the life you built without me. I met Callie's gaze, noting the way her eyes flickered from anger to guilt to fear in rapid succession. Her breath caught, and for a moment, I saw the woman I'd once loved, a mixture of strength and vulnerability. But then the gravity of her betrayal settled on her shoulders. She glanced at Talia, as if seeking refuge in their friendship, but found only steady resolve. Talia's expression was sympathetic yet unwavering. Callie's hands trembled as she reached for the drive, fingertips brushing mine in a gesture charged with remorse. I leaned back, crossing my arms. "You planned a wedding, used your maiden name, reserved the vineyard, sent invitations that haven't been returned," I said, voice low but clear enough for the neighboring tables to catch snippets. "You lied about wellness retreats and workshops. You erased me." Each word landed like stones in the hushed room. The candle's flame flickered, as though caught between our shared past and the chasm of deception she'd created. Callie's gaze dropped to the polished wood surface, tears glinting in her eyes. She swallowed hard and raised her head. "Griffin," she began, voice shaky. But the words died on her lips. The waitress hovered, breath held. Talia reached across, placing her hand lightly atop Callie's. "She deserves the truth," Talia said softly, and I felt the wind shift. In that moment, the three of us sat bound by betrayal and the hope of clarity. I inhaled steadily, ready to hear the explanations, the apologies, the admissions I'd waited months to uncover, and to decide whether any of it could ever heal the wounds she'd inflicted. When I left Bistro Lumen that night, the temperature had dropped, and the late July air felt sharp against my damp skin. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and turn signals, each mile drawing me further from the life I thought I had, and closer to whatever lay beyond the wreckage. By the time I pulled into my driveway, exhaustion weighed on me like a thick fog. I sat behind the wheel for a long moment, hand resting on the USB drive in my pocket, heartbeat syncing with the soft hum of the engine. Then I opened the car door and stepped into a new world. Inside the house, the children were already asleep, their rooms dark except for yellow night lights shaped like stars. I paused in the hallway, listening to the quiet rhythm of their breathing. Guilt stabbed at me, but I knew what I had done was necessary. Callie had stolen years of trust, weaving a life that excluded me entirely, even as we shared bedrooms and family dinners and whispered goodnights. I exhaled, pushing down the ache that wanted to rise. Tonight, it was done. Tomorrow, I would file the papers. Over the next few days, my world shifted on hinges I hadn't anticipated. My lawyer called to finalize the paperwork. Separation agreement drafted, custody schedule outlined, financial disclosures assembled. Each call, each signature, felt like another echo of what had shattered. When the filing was complete, I kept the confirmation email pinned in my inbox as a talisman, proof that I had claimed my right to truth and justice. I sent the notice to Callie's new email address, the one she'd used to plan her wedding, because part of me still hoped she would look at it and realize the gravity of her betrayal. But she didn't reply. In the quiet aftermath, the house felt cavernous. I slept on the couch in the guest room for several nights, the familiar scent of our bedroom suffocating in its emptiness. Each morning, I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, watching steam curl from my mug while I tried to imagine my life without her. The kids came rushing down, small bodies bundled in pajamas, and I forced a smile as I scooped up Nora and Jace, trying to anchor them in our changed reality. They asked where their mother was, and I told them she was on a work trip, a half-truth to soften the blow. In their trusting eyes, I saw the fragility of innocence, and I resolved to protect it. Meanwhile, messages began trickling in. My phone chirped with a single text from Talia. "Thank you for showing me the truth. I'm so sorry you had to discover it like that." That message, so simple, so compassionate, felt like an offering of solidarity. I replied, couldn't have done it without you. The kids and I owe you one. She wrote back almost immediately, call anytime, day or night. Her friendship became a lifeline, reminding me that I wasn't alone. Word of Callie's move spread through mutual acquaintances, a new apartment in Springfield, this time under both her names, a means of starting over on her terms. I heard she'd taken the ring Brody had given her and returned it to the jeweler, though I refused to confirm it myself. Part of me hoped it was true. That in letting go of him, she might recognize what she'd lost. But I couldn't bank on her regret. I had to focus on rebuilding. My routine settled into a new rhythm. Weekdays I woke early, 5 o'clock, without the annoyance of a shared alarm clock, slipped on running shoes, and pounded the pavement in Brookfield's still dark streets. Exercise became my therapy, the rhythmic thud of footfalls a metronome for my scattered thoughts. By sunrise, I was back home making breakfast for the kids, packing lunches, and dropping them off at school before I logged into work. My afternoons were filled with coding sprints and video calls, but even at work I carried the burden of our unspoken tragedy. I found solace in productivity, each completed task a reminder that I still had value beyond the betrayal I'd endured. Fridays were for custody exchange. I drove to Callie's new place, an anonymous building with bland gray siding and fluorescent lobby lights, and handed the kids over through the sliding car window. Nora hugged me fiercely, whispering, "I miss Mom," before stepping into her mother's arms. Jace waved solemnly, and I smiled through my own tightening throat. "Have a good weekend," I said, voice steady. "I'll see you Monday." I felt the weight of her gaze as I drove away, but I didn't look back. As weeks turned into months, the rawness of betrayal dulled to a steady ache. The fire she'd ignited in my life burned itself down, leaving ash I could sweep away with routine and resolve. I leaned on friends, Talia, Jeremy, even my boss, who noticed the weariness in my eyes and granted me flexible hours until I found my footing. I discovered new strengths, the ability to navigate complicated emotions with the kids, to manage finances on a single income, to find joy in quiet moments like Sunday morning pancake flops and evening walks with Nora and Jace's bicycle trailing behind. One evening, as the sky faded from salmon to onyx, I sat on the porch with a glass of iced tea and let the cicadas hum in the twilight. Nora practiced cartwheels on the lawn, while Jace chased lightning bugs with a jar in hand. I sipped my drink and felt a surprising calm settle over me. The man who once believed stability was the apex of security now understood that life's only true constant was change, and that I had the resilience to face it. I would always carry the scars of Callie's betrayal, bright lines across my heart that no amount of time could erase. But I was learning to breathe again, unshadowed by secrecy. My future stretched before me in uncertain contours, but I welcomed it. Whatever lay ahead, new love, new challenges, new joys, I would meet it with open eyes and a braced spirit. Because I deserved more than a life half-lived in deception, I deserved truth, renewal, and the freedom to rebuild in my own image. And this time, I wasn't looking back.